All right. So what I'm trying to say is a constructor. For every class, there is a constructor. If you write a class, there is a constructor for implicitly. So whenever you create an object for any class, it is going to invoke its class constructor implicitly. It doesn't matter whether you have a constructor for yourself or not. Even though if you do not have it, there is a constructor for every class, and it is going to call the superclass constructor implicitly. But if you're writing a constructor for yourself, it is not going to call any superclass constructor. But however, if you want to call the superclass constructor explicitly, it is possible. It's not a worry, right? So basically, if I'm going to run this program, so let me comment all these lines, and this way, yeah. Then I'm running this program. Say we got an animal object, right? Did I call this constructor explicitly anywhere? Vaibhav?
No, not really.
No. So I just create an object. It is going to call implicitly this. Automatically gets invoked. Only the point is, even though if you do not have it, see, when I said, when you create an object, it must have to call the constructor of the same class. But even though if you do not have it, it is still executing. That means it still has the constructor. But it still has a constructor. How does it look like? It looks like this way, right? Then it is calling the superclass constructor implicitly. But if you have a constructor for yourself, this statement is not there. If you want to call the superclass constructor explicitly, you have to call it. Otherwise, it's not going to call the object class constructor. So finally, what it is doing, the constructors in sense, it is going to initialize its instances in sense, instance variables, right? We do not have anything here, but I'm saying it's going to initialize its instances to the created object. That means, see, in most of the cases in the real time also, I'm very much sure, in most of the cases in the real time also, the instance variable gets, most of the people create in the constructor only. That means here, because I need not to call this constructor to create these instances. Let's say if I'm saying that x is equals to 10 somewhere, right? And self dot name is equals to animal, right? Let's say animal, right? Yeah, anything that you can create a number of instance variables in the constructors. That means in the previous sections we were talking about, we created an instance variable within the method level. So unless and until that you call that method, it's not going to create an instance variable. There is a problem. Yes? Yes, guys? So here, but when you create an object itself, it is going to call the constructor of the same class. When it's calling the constructor of the same class, it is simply creating an instance variables. So ultimately, it's going to initialize its instances. Now the point is, it's going to initialize these values, right? These things to the object, right? Yeah. So this is something where you actually write the logic for. This is also an instance method. I'm not saying it. Unless you call this method, it's not going to be initialized. That is the way. So say I'm running my program again, say animal object, right? Good to go. So if I say, let's say, and forget, don't forget to remember this point. So the constructor never ever has this written statement. We don't have a written statement for the constructors. The constructor never ever returns anything. Let's say hello. So there is a problem. It says that, say here, init should return none, not a string. That means don't ever try to write a written statement for the constructor. If you write it this is an error. Okay? Yeah? The type error. Okay? So let me comment this. One more thing. Yeah? So let's say this is a default constructor. A constructor which is not expecting any parameters, that we call it as a default constructor, right? Right? So because it is not expecting anything, by the time that you create an object, you need not pass anything. So let me say right now, let me change this to something else. let me say x comma y. Now this constructor which is expecting two parameters right now, that is x and y here. So but where we have to pass this arguments? By the time that it's going to be called, when it is going to be called, when you create an object. When you create an object, it is calling. It is expecting two parameters, right? So if I'm running this program, it still is going to be wrong because we even commented this, but still it is going to be wrong because it's expecting two parameters, but you haven't passed anything. See, yeah. So what you have to do basically, let me drag this down. You have to pass here that, right? Anything that you can pass it, right? Hello. Hi. It is satisfied right now. That means we call it as this. We call it as this parameterized constructor. Right? Previously, when the constructor which is not expecting any parameters, that is called a default constructor. Right? Good to go, guys? Yeah?
I'm not sure about this X and Y thing.
All right. So, yeah, please. Question.
The question is if I initialized Y in the program over there, if I just wrote self dot Y is equal to some value, then would I still have to write parameterize the function that I call later on? So like you said hi and hello, if I didn't put that, and if I just put self dot Y is equal to, let's say, 5.
Here you're talking about?
Yeah, that I removed, and then in the initial part of the program where I've written self.x in line 14, below that if I write self.y is equal to 5,
okay,
will it then get printed? Will it then work?
It's okay. There is no problem about it. But in fact, you're actually trying to create an instance variable here. But what is these things? This is a local, in fact. But you have the same names, in fact. There is an ambiguity between this and these variables. If you say directly here, let's say the print of x, so what variable it's going to be printed? If I say the print of the self.x, what variable it's going to be printed? There's a difference because x is just a local, because you're trying to say this is an x and you're trying to create the same instance variable. How can you convert this local into an instance? It's not something that way, right? If I'm running my program, say here. Yeah, please.
So why did you have to parameterize when you put y, and you didn't have to do anything in the parameter when you had x?
Can you repeat the question for me?
Why was it that when only x was there in the initialization function in the parameterized constructor, when there was only x, you didn't have to put anything in the parameter later when you were calling the function in line 25. But when you put y, you had to initialize it, or you had to put something in the brackets.
Here?
Yeah.
Yes, because it is not explicitly called. You're not calling this constructor explicitly. It is only called when you create an object. When you create an object, it is calling. Then this is the person who is responsible to pass the arguments, because you cannot call this explicitly. Is there any way that you can call explicitly this? No. That is the reason. Only by the time that you create an object, it is calling implicitly. So that is the reason. This is the where that you have to pass the arguments.
Okay.
Understand my point? Is that satisfied your question?
Yeah, it does.
Sure. Fine. If I'm not understand your question properly, you can shoot me, no problem. That's fine. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay.
Right. So let's say if I'm passing it some stupid things over here, let's say. Right, let me drag this up. And we will be printing this here. So x is 24, and when I say self.x is 10. Yeah, there is an ambiguity for this x and this x. This is an instance x, this is something else. This is a local. Right? Yeah, good to go? Yeah. So basically, this is the where it's going to have to pass the arguments, because say something, if you're calling this eat method and a eat method which is expecting some, variable called, let's say, behavior, let's say, right? Not the eat method, which is expecting a parameter. So by the time that you call this method, because it's not going to be called implicitly, when you create something, it's not going to be called. You have to call this explicitly, this eat method. Then you have to pass this some arguments to this eat method. Unless and otherwise you pass something as a one argument, it is not going to be executed statements. Yeah.
Mhm.
So this is calling implicitly. When you create an object, it's called. Automatically it's getting called. So that means this is the where actually the problem is occurring. That is the reason if I pass some arguments, then it's calling this. Yeah?
Mhm.
Good to go. But you can ask me a question. You said that, implicitly every class provides this, and I also said that when you create an object, it is going to call the constructor of the same class. Then it is going to call the superclass constructor. Only it's going to call the superclass constructor when we do not provide the constructor of our class. That means the Python interpreter provides the constructor. In case where you do not write the constructor for yourself in class, then in that case only it's going to call the superclass constructor. Right? See, I'm writing an object here. Am I getting any error? No, because it's okay. Even if I do not write this statement explicitly, it is still there. It is still there because every class must and should extend this object class. Let's say you can question me right now. Okay, we have another class. We can have a number of classes in a single file. We can have a number of variables in a single file. We can have anything in a single file. Don't worry. Right? So let's say I'm talking about the dog, right? I'm saying it, right? Now I'm saying that the def, let's say walk or something. Right? So I'm written that I'm well defined how to walk, let's say. Right? A stupid statement, don't worry. Now tell me this right now. Can you guess it? Pranav? Pranav.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything wrong with this code right now?
Mm. No.
Vaibhav?
No, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah. So can you confirm me this dog is extending object class or not? Yes, it is definitely extending.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm not interested to put the relation between the direct object, because the dog has come from the animal, because it's a animal breed, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is not human. Okay. Now we can say that this dog here, we can say that dog is now getting characteristics of an animal.
Okay.
That is the reason we are saying that dog is an animal. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, why wouldn't you say that this is a human? Right? Because it's an animal, because it has the characteristics of an animal. No, that is a dog. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Right. Well and good. Now, the dog is extending an animal, because we have already written the class of our own saying that an animal. Now, the dog is getting the characteristics of an animal. That means dog need not to implement all the methods again and again, right? If you want to do, if you wanted to have this eat method in the dog, dog also eats, but dog eats in a specific way, right? But you need not to define this, because it is also getting to this dog class. That means you're getting all the properties of an animal. In fact, you're getting all the properties of an animal, because whatever you define in the animal class, you're simply going to get inherited. I'm saying it, you're simply going to get inherited,
Mm-hmm.
right? Simply going to get inherited. All the methods and all instances also get inherited to the dog class. One thing I wanted to ask you a question right now. Now the dog, when you create a dog object at the 31st line, it is going to call the constructor of the dog class. Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yeah.
It is going to call the constructor of the dog class.
Mhm.
When the dog class constructor, we did not retain any explicit constructor, but it's a Python interpreter providing a constructor for every class. So the dog is also having a constructor, but when you create an object, it's going to call the dog class constructor. But there is a tie. Now there is a problem here. When the dog class constructor, it's called by creating an object, it is calling the superclass constructor. The superclass for this dog is an animal class. But what constructor it is calling, first of all? What constructor in sense? See, when you go back here, see this code. It is calling the superclass constructor because we did not write any constructor for ourselves, isn't it so? Yes or not?
Yeah.
Now the Python interpreter provided that is a default constructor. A default constructor has an implicit constructor has a super keyword which is calling the superclass constructor implicitly.
Yeah.
No, but it's okay. It is calling it, but what constructor? Because we have a parameters constructor here. So what constructor it is calling? If I run this program, say there is an error. There is an error. If you want to say the error, say look at here. So the init missing 2 argument position for the x and y. See, we are executing the program for the dog, and anyway, and it is actually looking at here. Looking at here, see, these x and y. The problem is it is calling. If I see, let's say, if I don't include this x and y, right, and if I take out this because it's not expecting anything. If I'm running back my program, and there is a still error. One moment, let me check that. Okay, you're trying to print this, yeah? Where does this x come? It's come from. And self.y, self.name. Let me check this right now.
No, like the comment.
Right, there's my bad. This is good. Now to tell me, even if I do not call this animal, even if I do not create an animal object, see, what's happening? It is getting printed the animal object. Yes or no? Even this is also executing, but we're not printing it. In order to get this statement get printed onto the console, now we have to say the print of this. All right. So in fact, it is written in an object because you're trying to print the dog object, right? I mean to say to call this walk method. I mean to say this walk method, you must have to create an object to call this walk method. I'm sorry, I thought that this is something else. So whenever you're trying to print an object also, it is going to print the object. We'll come to the point after we finish this, constructors. But the point is here is you're going to call the constructor of the dog class by creating a dog object. It is implicitly calling the animal class constructor. It is implicitly calling the animal class constructor because you put the relation between that, dog is a child class, animal is a superclass. So it is going to call the animal class constructor. It is only calling the default constructor of this class. Because we have only the default constructor here that is written by us, then it is going to execute this. Then it is not calling the superclass object because the animal class for the superclass is object class. Now, if the animal class extends object class, the dog extends animal class. The dog is indirectly extends the object class also. Yes or no? Say if you are extended by your parent extended by your grandparents, ultimately you can say that you are extended by your parents also because you're going to get the characteristics of your grandparents as well. Yes or no? In the same way, yes or no?
Yes.
No? Not guaranteed. See, obviously we're going to get the genes from our grandparents. Yes, that is natural. Nobody responding.
It's true.
Yeah, it's true. So in the same way, the animal is extending an object class. That means here you need to observe animal extends object class here. And if animal extends an object class here, the dog extends an animal. the dog is indirectly extending an object class. That is the reason the dog is also getting the characteristics of an object. So what happens normally in sense? See, if I'm creating here the D is equals to dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
The D is equals to dog and D dot walk. What happens? And if I say the D dot, right? The D dot X, what happens? If I say the D dot Y, what happens? Print of the D dot name. The D dot name, what happens?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can I say that this D dot eat method? By passing one argument saying that, I'm a dog. Let's say this is dog each method. Anything I'm passing one argument state. So tell me, is it right or wrong? Pranav,
Yeah.
is it right?
I guess it's right.
Why, Bob?
Yeah.
Not sure?
It looks right. Yeah.
Okay, it's right. Because you're getting the characteristics in sense, you're getting already get inherited all the properties of an animal. See, by the time that you create an object, these instances gets created. And I said, whenever a constructor gets called, it's going to initialize its instances to the created object. We created a dog object, right? Then all instances, these are all coming to this particular class also, right? So that means X, Y, name, all instances gets created. Those things get assigned to the dog object. Now, if you say that d.walk, it is going to execute this particular thing. Okay, we have a written statement. As I said, right, we have to put it this in the under print statement, right? So that we're going to get this statement. Otherwise, you don't get this. Coming to the 33 line, you're trying to print X, but where is X? Where is this instance variable called X, which is coming from an animal? If I run this program, say, there is no problem.
Okay.
The X is which is coming from animal. The Y is coming from an animal. The name is coming from an animal. Eat is because you're calling the d.eat method. Eat. See, in the dog object, we do not have an eat method, but it's still we are going to get it.
Yeah.
But if I simply remove this statement, everything is wrong.
Yeah.
Completely wrong. Where is this d.x has come from? Where is this d.y? It's got stuck over here. It's got stuck over here completely. And there is no this, and it's unable to find this one. It doesn't even know this eat method as well. So you need to make sure to this way. Yeah? Good to go, Vaibhav?
Not really. So my question is that in dog, when you are inheriting the characteristics from animal, what are the exact things that are being inherited? So it's not obviously that.
Okay, that's a good thing. So you get inherited the instances. That means instance variables and instance methods. And even if you have a class methods, also gets inherited. No problem.
Okay, and how do you use how do I use something from let's say the animal class in the dog class?
How do I use? Sorry.
Yeah, how do I use them here? How do I perform operations on let's say the instant variables which are there in class animal?
How do we perform? So we need not to rewrite it. It's a reusability. It's that. If something which is already defined some logic in the superclass, see, it's a writing same kind of logic in the subclass, right? If that is useful for this, making an implementation to make a perfect class for this, if you're writing the same kind of logic, writing it again, it's a bad idea because you have to reduce the code wherever it's possible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes or no? Let's say I have let's say I have a car and I have an engine. I have already written how this engine works. A lot of code I have written. Let's say a particular feature also I have written, right? For any particular software application. Let's say if I want to use that logic somewhere in a situations where I have to implement further things, that may be useful for my further implementation of my future. In that sense, if you're writing the same logic again in your class, that's just stupid, because you're going to increase the length of the code unnecessarily, isn't it so? Where you can actually access things and reduce the code, then it's a better idea.
Okay.
Hope you accept me.
And why wasn't it working when you had put x and y in the animal class? And you had to remove x and y, right, for the class dog to inherit the features. So why wasn't it working before?
Here?
Yeah.
All right. Coming to the point is. All right. The coming to the point is, now I'm going to put the relation as animal. All right. So because dog is extending an animal. Now let's say, forget about this, all the rest of the lines. We're coming to this point, especially. So the dog class constructor, we are creating a dog object. It is going to call the dog class constructor. I mean to say it's going to call the dog class constructor. That means it's going to invoke it. So we have it the dog class constructor because we are not writing it. The Python interpreter puts the constructor for every class. So that looks like this way. When it looks like this way, what it is doing, it is calling the superclass constructor because we have a super keyword here. But superclass constructor, which constructor it is calling? It is calling only this default constructor, right? But we have this parameters constructor. If you have your own constructor written by you in your classes, the Python interpreter never ever puts another constructor for you. That is the reason we are going to get an error. See, it says that x and y. The problem is I'm not even creating an on-mail object anywhere, but still at the 31st line, it is calling the dog class constructor. The dog class constructor, which we not defined by us, it is there implicitly, and it is calling the superclass animal constructor. It is calling the superclass default constructor only, but it is not there in the animal class. It is not there in the animal class. As it is not there in the animal class, how can you execute it? There's a problem. So what you have to do to make it satisfy this role, we need not to write this one also. We can directly pass it from here. Over. Okay. But you can ask me a question that, you're creating a dog object and passing in arguments where we have this parameterized constructor, which is defined in the dog class. It is there. It simply passes these values to the animal class constructor implicitly. Yes, Pranav.
Yeah.
Pranav.
Yeah.
Understanding?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the reason. So if let's say, can we have a two constructor in a class then? See, the answer is see. If I define another constructor, so bad, self. Now, this is now the parameters constructor, as I told. Now, this is now the default constructor that is written by me. Okay, this is not provided by the Python interpreter. Who is a Python interpreter? Is eligible, is responsible to execute your all program, right? It only puts when you written the class in the file, it is only puts the constructor in any class that you write it. Unless and otherwise, it's not putting any constructor. Your program never ever gets executed. A simple logic for that. All right, so I'm writing some stupid statement here, right? Let's say constructor, it's a default constructor written by me, right? Now, the point is, now is it going to work fine? Pranav, Vaibhav.
Yeah.
Is it going to be work fine right now?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
All right. That is going to be work. I don't ask a question, however. So the problem is, the thing is, you can have two constructors, but it's not actually going to be work out. Say, it understands that, okay, you have written a very first constructor here, then you're trying to define another constructor, right? then you're trying to define another constructor. So this is got, no more there as a indicator. So it is not even take care of this. It only knows this default constructor. If it is knows only the default constructor, by the time that you're working on this, you're passing this. If you don't pass this, it is going to be work. All right. The problem is this, because the d dot x, because we don't have x, because we are calling this class, this constructor, we don't have any x and things. So that is the reason we're getting those errors. But the point is, if I simply put a colon, all commented, and I'm running back, but still I'm getting it.
Yeah.
See, the default constructor returned by me. That means you need to understand, we do have a parameters constructor. It is not affecting anything. It's not going to give any error if you have two constructors. The problem is, the main problem for this is, you should not have two constructors for any class.
Okay.
But you can actually still satisfy a single constructor. All right, let me say right now, let me delete this and let me put a copy of this. Now we can actually make this working as, make this indicated as a parameters constructor, at the same time default constructor also. How do we make that? So I'm initially saying that if something which I do not pass anywhere, right, make it this 0.
Okay.
That means I'm saying that by default, if I'm trying to create an object anywhere for the animal or a dog, because the dog is extending an animal. If I'm not passing any arguments from there, simply it is going to invoke this constructor only, because by default it is always choose 0.
Okay.
Then if I'm saying that y is equals to initially 0, now the point is, still I'm not making any changes here. As you thought that we have to pass some arguments from here, right? Now if I'm actually calling this, it's still working. But how? Because I made it that this is itself at a default constructor. I made it that this is also parameter constructor. Suppose if I'm passing some arguments from this dog right now, saying that, right, it still works, because the 0 got overridden by these values.
Okay.
Yes, Vaibhav?
Yeah.
So you can make it a constructor to work as a default constructor. You make it to work as a parameters constructor. The only thing is you're setting the values as 0 initially, even if you're not passing it, right? Even if you're not passing any arguments from the constructor, by the time that you're creating an object, it's still considered that, the default values are 0. If you're passing something, those values gets overridden in the x and y places, right? Yes? Yeah. Good to go?
Yeah.
Any questions as part of this session?
No. We're good for now.
Pranav,
Yeah.
any questions as part of this?
No.
Can I explain it once again to make it sure to work? And I think in the second
Assignment.
test, what
Yeah.
is the second answer that you have put there?
No, mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the default constructor provided by the Python interpreter always has a super.init self. Now this statement. The problem with this is it's almost correct. The only point is the self has to be removed from this parenthesis, right? Otherwise, it's going to be right.
Yeah.
Only it is right when the superclass has a default constructor also. You need to understand. So, but however, a default constructor provided by the Python interpreter always has this. No, this has only this without this self. So the constructors can also be invoked explicitly with its names. You can try for this, but you can ask me a question. The constructor are always associated with the object creation and created. It is going to invoke the corresponding constructor. And if any instances, it initialize them in the created object. Yes, that is correct. All of them are above correct. No, some of them are wrong. You cannot justify when constructor gets invoked depends on the Python interpreter. No, it's not that way. Yeah. They have control of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the third question is, write a program that shows the difference between, we had worked this in the last session, starting with instance variables. This is easy for you guys. And the very first question is,
Yeah, that's
define a
easy.
class. This is something like a purely terminology question. So that is the reason I'm asking you. Define a class and its instance can initialize values to instances, right? If you can actually clearly observe the terminology wise, you'll understand this question. Define a class and its instance can initialize values. Its instance in the sense object, instances in the sense instance variables, right? At least two instances must be initialized and accessed through its reference. So this is simple, right? Vaibhav,
Yeah.
is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Say the main part of this assignments is to improve your logical thinking. It's not something that, why we need to design, why we need to write, create these kind of things. You can question me. But only the point is here where you have to improve your logical thinking. It's not something else. It is only improve your logical thinking, nothing else. It's not really, you're not in the real time also, you're not going to write a stupid kind of design like this. Only the point is if you wanted to make it, how you have to think it. Very small, examples only. I mean, I'm not writing a 20, 30 lines of program anywhere. It's just a small kind of logical thinking. Interesting, right? Vaibhav?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is just one thing. Okay, I need to explain this one. Coming to the point over here. Say. All right. So let me escape this right now. Okay. Now I'm creating a dog object. Is it correct? Yes, guys?
Yeah.
It's correct because we have x is equal to 0, y is equal to 0 there at the 13th line, right? So if you do not pass it also, it's very fine. See, there is no problem. Yeah. The point is, if I put this object itself in the print function, what it is going to be print? What it is going to print? What are you trying to print? When you're printing an object in a sense, what are you trying to print? It's simply going to return the object location in the memory.
Oh, okay.
It is simply going to return the object location in the memory. But I don't want object location, but how it is happening in a sense, there is a str method. What is that method?
STR.
str method. Implicitly, that is also getting invoked when you're trying to print an object. Whenever you're trying to print an object of any class, it is simply going to invoke that str method, right? And the str method has, and saying that it's going to return the object location in the memory. But if you override that method, what is that method? See, if you can actually say here, str method, the same thing we are going to write it over here. Okay, double underscore str double underscore self, right? Then written. I'm saying that written. It's a dog object or something else. You can write it anything. If I'm running back again, so it's a dog object. But if I'm actually taking out this, say it's object location. But what does it mean? What does it mean in sense? This is also there implicitly. Only the point is it is only going to invoke when you're trying to print the object. But what is there in it? It is there that it has to return the object location in the memory, the user trying to print the object. But that is there as a default. But when I'm trying to override this str method in my class for myself, instead of returning the object location, and it is going to return whatever
Okay.
you're trying to return. Right? Vaibhav?
Yeah.
Good to go? The same
Yeah, so it returns the location of the
object.
of the object?
Yes.
Okay.
Same. Object at, this is hexadecimal code. Object at, right? The dog object at, there's some location in the memory. See, if you're really talking about a memory, so there is a PhD and postdoc studies, and we are not into that way. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. So, and coming to the point and replacing back. So, because I'm overriding this method, So that instead of returning the object location, it is going to return whatever we say. Simple as that. Right?
Yeah.
Simple this way. Simple 2 lines of code. Right? Do not use any explicit constructor. I know the people use very smart, Okay, what is their intent? I can return this, the printed object in a printed way. So I said that do not use any explicit constructor. Say this is some simple logic. In fact.
Yeah. And there's an easy one.
Yeah. The 7th question is, this is a bit hard one, maybe.
I actually I wrote this code, but I didn't get the work. I'll just this is the 7th one, right? Yeah. Yeah. If I change the values in this. Yeah, and this, if I put something like
is this my code? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's coming like this.
Oh, is it coming this way?
Yeah.
All right. So 1 comma row 1. Where we're missing something line then 1 to 3. 3 comma 7. 3 rows and 7 columns, right?
Yeah.
Okay.